My mother told me she was going to make me a child star no matter what. She once made me perform my audition scene with a 103-degree fever, and when I threw up on the casting director's shoes, she yelled at me for ruining my big break instead of asking if I was okay. That was my reality. From the day my brother Noah and I were born, Mom started planning our Hollywood careers. When other parents took baby pictures, she got us headshots. Dad went along with everything because he loved her dream more than he loved us. By 4, auditions were my whole life. Up at 4 a.m. for hair and makeup, which meant Mom yanking my scalp bloody and painting my face until I looked like a creepy doll. She'd drill lines during the 2-hour drives to studios, slapping the steering wheel every time I messed up. If I dozed off in the car, she'd spray me with ice water. "Stars are never tired," she'd shriek, like that made any sense for a preschooler. Noah had it worse because he had a condition that made it hard to memorize things. So naturally, Mom would keep him up all night before auditions, making him repeat scenes until his brain felt like exploding. When he was 6 and blanked during a callback, she made him stand in the corner for 8 hours straight. No bathroom, no water, just standing there croaking out lines while his legs shook. He peed himself after hour 5 but had to keep going. The smell was awful, but Mom said suffering built character. Every rejection made her crazier. She hired an acting coach who believed in method training for children, which apparently meant torturing us into emotions. Auditioning for a sad character? Time to hear about dead puppies and watch Mom break my toys. Need to play scared? Here's 3 days without sleep while she shows me horror movies. I was 7 and having panic attacks, but she called that getting into character. When I finally booked a cereal commercial, Mom acted like I'd cured cancer. $2,000 paycheck, but she spent 10 grand on new headshots and some scammer publicist. We ate ramen for months while she talked about my brand to anyone who'd listen. Even the grocery store clerk heard about how I was going to be bigger than Shirley Temple. "Lady, I just wanted to play with my friends, not be a Dead Child Stars sequel." Noah snapped during an audition for a Spielberg movie. Just stopped midline and walked out. Mom found him hiding under a car in the parking lot and dragged him out by his ankles while the casting director watched from a window. We got banned from Universal, but somehow Noah was the villain in her story. After that, I became her only hope, which meant double the crazy. She started giving me performance enhancers, which were definitely just speed. Little white pills that made my heart go nuts but kept me peppy for 12-hour audition days. Blue ones that turned me into an emotion-free robot for crying scenes. She'd practice injecting oranges and promised I'd get vitamin shots soon. Sure, Mom, because 8-year-olds totally need mystery injections for success. The worst was this director who wanted authentic pain for an abuse survivor role. Mom decided method acting meant actually hurting me. Started with pinches hard enough to bruise, escalated to holding my hand over candles because my screams weren't raw enough. I got callbacks with second-degree burns, but lost to a girl whose mom had probably done worse. That's when I realized we were in a sick competition where childhood was the price. When I was 10, some creep approached us at Denny's claiming to be a talent scout. No social media profile. Private audition at his house. Red flags everywhere. But Mom practically threw me in his car because he name-dropped some Disney kids. The audition was immediately sketchy, but Mom stood there coaching me to be friendlier, while this guy's eyes made my skin crawl. When he mentioned swimsuits for movement assessment, I locked myself in his bathroom and called 911. Cops found exactly what you'd expect at his house. Mom screamed at me the whole ride home about ruining my career. Not one word about what could have happened to me. Just fury that I'd thrown away connections and embarrassed her in front of someone important. That's when I knew she'd literally let someone hurt me if it meant a starring role. After that, she went underground. Sketchy auditions in warehouses, blacklisted directors, projects that paid cash and didn't ask for work permits. She'd dye my hair and lie about my age. When I started developing, she'd wrap my chest with ace bandages because younger-looking kids booked more jobs. Nothing mattered except fame. Then I overheard her negotiating private sessions with producers. She was literally discussing prices for things that made me want to puke, like I was merchandise. When she caught me listening, she smiled. "This is how stars are really made, baby." That night, Noah showed me cigarette burns covering his arms. Mom's character building for some foster kid role. We packed to run, but then heard her booking flights to Thailand, where child labor laws are more flexible. She'd already bought tickets for some opportunity that sounded like human trafficking with a casting couch. We were supposed to leave in 12 hours for her big break, that would probably break us permanently. Noah and I looked at each other and knew we had to disappear before morning. I grabbed Noah's hand and we moved fast toward my bedroom, knowing we have maybe 10 minutes before Mom checks on us. My heart pounds so hard I can hear it in my ears as I pull our emergency backpack from under my bed where I've been hiding it for 3 weeks. The zipper makes a soft sound that seems way too loud in the quiet house, and I freeze for a second, listening for Mom's footsteps on the stairs. Nothing. Just her voice still talking downstairs about flight times and hotel arrangements that make my skin crawl. Noah whispers that his burn cream is in the bathroom, but I tell him we can't risk it because the floor creaks near Mom's room. We stuff the bag with an extra shirt each, the cash I've been stealing from Mom's purse $1 at a time, our birth certificates I found last month, and 2 water bottles from my closet. My hands shake so bad I drop one of the water bottles and it rolls under the bed. Noah crawls under to get it while I check the hallway again. Still clear. I check Noah's arms in the dim light from my nightlight and see fresh cigarette burns that are still red and blistered from yesterday's character work for some foster kid audition. My stomach twists with rage and fear, but I force myself to think clearly about our next move. The burns look infected, and I know he needs real medicine, not just the cheap stuff from the drugstore that Mom uses when she bothers to treat what she does to us. We hear Mom's voice downstairs on the phone talking about departure times, and I know this is real. She's actually planning to take us somewhere we might never come back from. I mouth now to Noah, and we creep toward the back door through the kitchen, stepping over the spots where the floor squeaks. I remember every creaky board from years of sneaking around trying to avoid Mom's attention. Third board from the fridge, fifth board near the sink, the spot right in front of the pantry. We move like we're on one of those obstacle courses from the action movies Mom made me watch for stunt training. My hand shakes so bad I almost drop the spare key when I'm unlocking the back door, and Noah steadies my wrist with his small hand. The motion sensor light on the porch stays off because I unscrewed the bulb 2 days ago when I started planning this, and we slip into the dark backyard. The grass is wet with dew and soaks through my sneakers immediately. I didn't think about that when I was planning. Didn't think about a lot of things actually, but it's too late to go back now. We climb over the fence into the neighbor's yard instead of using our gate because the hinges scream, and I scrape my knee on the wood but don't make a sound. Pain shoots up my leg, but I bite my lip hard and keep moving. Once we hit the sidewalk, we walk fast toward the main road, trying to look normal even though it's almost midnight and we're 10 and 8 years old alone. A dog barks from someone's backyard and I nearly jump out of my skin. Noah grabs my arm and we walk faster, our backpack bouncing against my shoulders. The street is empty except for a few parked cars and the orange glow from the streetlights. Everything looks different at night, scarier and bigger somehow. My phone buzzes in my pocket and I see 17 missed calls from Mom already, which means she checked our rooms. My hands are shaking worse now as I pull out both our phones and Noah watches as I remove the SIM cards like I learned from a YouTube video, then drop them in a storm drain. The little cards make a tiny splash when they hit the water at the bottom. Mom can't track us now. At least I hope she can't. She's always been crazy good at finding us when we try to hide. We walk for 30 minutes toward the commercial area and my legs ache, but Noah's breathing gets wheezy so I slow down. He's always had breathing problems when he gets stressed, and running away from home is pretty much the most stressed we've ever been. A car pulls up next to us and a man asks if we need a ride, his smile reminding me exactly of the Denny's Predator, and I grab Noah and run into a 24-hour drugstore. The automatic doors whoosh open and the bright lights make me blink after the dark street. The man's car drives past slowly, and I see him looking at the store, but he doesn't stop. My heart is pounding so hard I feel dizzy. The drugstore clerk looks concerned, but I pretend we're waiting for our dad in the bathroom and we hide in the candy aisle until the man's car drives away. My brain races through options like I'm planning an audition strategy. Bus station means cameras and questions. Police means maybe going back home. Hospital means people who have to report things. Noah is looking at me waiting for me to decide, and I can see the trust in his eyes even though he's scared. I decide on the hospital emergency room because Noah's burns need treatment anyway, and I remember reading that doctors have to report suspected child abuse. We walk another 20 minutes to County General and I coach Noah on what to say. Tell the truth, show the burns, don't protect Mom anymore. He nods and repeats it back to me in a whisper. The hospital is this big concrete building with bright lights and an ambulance parked out front. We walk through the automatic doors into the waiting room and it smells like cleaning stuff and something else I can't name. A security guard looks at us but doesn't say anything. The lady at the desk has kind eyes, and when I tell her my brother needs help, she comes around the counter to look at us properly. She looks at Noah first, and her eyes go straight to his arms where his sleeves are pushed up from the walk. Her whole face changes in like 2 seconds flat, and she kneels down so she's at our level. She asks if she can see his arms better, and Noah nods and holds them out. I watch her roll up his sleeves all the way, and see her jaw get tight when she sees the cigarette burns covering his skin. Some are fresh and red, some are scabbed over, some are old white scars. She touches one gently with just her fingertip and asks how this happened. Noah looks at me and I nod, so he says it in this flat voice like he's reading a script. My mom held cigarettes on my skin to make me cry real for an audition. The nurse's eyes get shiny with tears, but she blinks them back fast. She stands up and tells us to come with her right now. Not in a mean way, but in a way that means she's taking charge. We follow her past the waiting room full of people and through double doors into the back part of the emergency room. She takes us straight to a private exam room instead of making us wait in the hallway like the other patients. The room has a bed with paper on it and bright lights and cabinets full of medical stuff. She tells us a doctor will be here in just a minute and leaves. Noah sits on the exam table and his legs swing because he's too short to touch the floor. I stand next to him and hold his hand. A man in a white coat comes in maybe 3 minutes later and he has a kind face with wrinkles around his eyes. He introduces himself as Dr. Baldwin and shakes both our hands like we're adults. He asks Noah if it's okay if he looks at his arms and Noah says yes in a whisper. The doctor pulls over a stool and sits down so he's not standing over Noah. He examines the burns one by one, so gentle that Noah barely feels it. He asks permission before touching each spot. Can I look at this one? Is it okay if I check this area? May I see your other arm? It's so different from how Mom handles us, always rough and impatient, yanking us around like we're dolls. Noah starts crying, not because it hurts, but because someone is finally being nice to him. The doctor doesn't tell him to stop crying or toughen up. He just hands Noah a tissue and waits. Then he gets up and comes back with a special camera that has a ruler thing attached to it. He explains he needs to take pictures to document the injuries and asks if that's okay. Noah nods and wipes his eyes. The doctor photographs every burn from different angles, and the camera flashes make spots in my vision. He points out how some burns are fresh from yesterday, some are a few days old, some are a week old, some are older. He says this pattern shows the burns happened multiple times over a long period, not all at once. Then he asks if there are other injuries he should know about. I show him the bald patches on my scalp where Mom yanked my hair out by the roots. He parts my hair carefully and takes pictures of my scalp. I show him the bruises on my arms shaped like fingerprints from where Mom grabs me. He photographs those too. He asks about the scrape on my knee from climbing the fence, and I tell him that just happened tonight when we were running away. He cleans it and puts a bandage on it. A different nurse comes in. A woman with gray hair pulled back in a bun. She explains that because of what they've seen, they're required by law to call Child Protective Services. She asks if we understand what that means. I nod because I researched this before we ran. It means the government has to investigate if kids are being hurt at home. She asks if we're okay with them making that call, and I say yes. Noah looks scared, so I squeeze his hand 3 times. Our secret code. The nurse says someone from CPS will come talk to us, but it might take a few hours because it's the middle of the night. She says we'll be safe here and no one can take us anywhere without CPS permission. They move us to a different room, a family consultation room that has soft chairs instead of the hard exam table. The lights are dim instead of bright. They bring us juice boxes and a pack of crackers. Noah drinks his juice in like 10 seconds because we haven't had anything since dinner. I sip mine slow and save half for later in case we need it. Noah leans against my shoulder and falls asleep sitting up. I stay awake watching the door, my brain going over what I'm going to say when CPS gets here. I practice in my head like I'm preparing for an audition, except this time I'm not performing, I'm telling the truth. After maybe an hour, a woman comes in quietly so she doesn't wake Noah. She introduces herself as the hospital social worker and says she needs to tell us something. Our mother called the main desk asking if any kids matching our description were brought in tonight. My whole body goes ice cold. The social worker says they told her no patients by our names are registered. I ask what if she comes here anyway? What if she checks every room? The social worker promises their security team has our photos and knows to watch for her. She says Mom can't get past the locked doors to the patient areas, and if she tries to force her way in, they'll call the police. This makes me feel a tiny bit safer, but I still keep watching the door. Noah wakes up around 2:30 a.m. asking where we are, and I remind him we're at the hospital waiting for CPS. He nods and drinks the rest of my juice. At 3 a.m., a man in regular clothes arrives, jeans and a button-up shirt, not a uniform. He introduces himself as Atticus Wolf from Child Protective Services Emergency Response. He has kind eyes, but his voice is serious when he sits down across from us. He explains he needs to talk to us about our home situation and what brought us here tonight. He starts to say they'll need to interview us separately, but I interrupt. I tell him Noah has a condition that makes it hard for him to remember things when he's stressed, and he does way better when I'm nearby. Mr. Wolf looks at Noah, then at me, then thinks for a minute. He says, okay, Noah can sit where he can see me through the doorway during his interview. That works for us. Mr. Wolf asks who wants to go first, and I volunteer. Noah sits in a chair right inside the doorway where he can see me in the hallway, and I sit in another consultation room with Mr. Wolf. He has a laptop and a notebook. I tell him everything in the order I practiced. I start with the auditions beginning when I was 4, the physical punishments when we messed up, the method acting torture, the performance pills Mom gave us. I tell him about the Denny's predator and how Mom got mad at me for calling 911 instead of worried about what could have happened. I tell him about the sketchy warehouse auditions and how Mom would lie about our ages. I tell him about tonight, overhearing Mom book tickets to Thailand, one-way tickets with no return date. Mr. Wolf takes notes and doesn't interrupt me once. He just nods and sometimes asks questions that show he believes me. Can you describe the pills? What color were they? How often did she give them to you? Do you know any of the producers' names from the warehouse auditions? When it's Noah's turn, I sit in the doorway where he can see me. He tells Mr. Wolf about the cigarette burns and how Mom did it to make him cry real for a foster kid role. He tells about standing in the corner for 8 hours when he was 6 and blanked during an audition. He tells about the method acting torture and the no-sleep nights before auditions. His voice stays steady the whole time because he can see me right there. I feel so proud of how brave he's being, telling the truth even though it's scary. Mr. Wolf closes his laptop and checks his watch, then tells us someone else needs to talk to us before we can figure out what happens next. Around 5 a.m., a woman walks into the consultation room wearing jeans and a blazer, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She introduces herself as Detective Reese and explains she investigates crimes against children, her voice flat and professional like she's done this 1,000 times. She pulls out a notebook and asks me specific questions about the Denny's incident, wanting the exact date and the man's physical description, and what he said about swimsuits. I tell her everything I remember, how he had a mustache and drove a silver car and kept touching my shoulder. She writes down the warehouse locations where Mom took us for sketchy auditions, asking if I remember any producer names or company signs. I give her 3 addresses I memorized because I'm good at remembering places, and 2 names I heard Mom mention on phone calls. Detective Reese nods after each answer like she's checking boxes on a mental list, her pen moving fast across the pages. She asks about the Thailand tickets, and I tell her Mom booked them for 2 days from now, one way with no return date, and the detective's mouth gets tight. When she's done writing, she thanks us for being so detailed and says this information helps build a strong case. Then she leaves to start making calls. Mr. Wolf comes back in and sits down across from us, his face serious. He explains they're doing an emergency removal, which means we can't go home, and they need to look for family members who might take us. I tell him Mom's parents died before we were born, and Dad's parents live in Florida, and haven't talked to us in years because they thought Mom was crazy. Mr. Wolf asks about aunts or uncles or cousins or family friends, anyone safe who knows us. I shake my head because Mom cut off everyone who questioned her parenting, and Dad never had much family to begin with. Mr. Wolf writes this down and says they'll still try to contact Dad's parents in Florida, but in the meantime, they need to find us a place to stay. The hospital social worker comes back carrying a tray with food from the cafeteria, setting it on the table between us. There's pancakes and scrambled eggs and orange juice and little containers of syrup. Noah stares at the pancakes like he's never seen food before, then picks up a fork and starts eating. He finishes one pancake in about 30 seconds, then a second one, then a third. I eat slower because my stomach feels weird from stress, but the food tastes good. Nobody's timing us or threatening to take it away if we mess up lines, and I realize this is the first meal in forever where I'm not scared. The social worker smiles and brings Noah more juice, then steps into the hallway to make phone calls about placement. I can hear her talking through the door, words like sibling set and emergency shelter and immediate availability. Mr. Wolf gets calls too, stepping out to talk in the hallway while we finish eating. By 8 a.m., Mr. Wolf comes back and explains they've arranged for us to go to a youth emergency shelter because there are no foster homes available right now that can take siblings together. He promises it's temporary and they'll keep looking for a better placement, maybe a week or two max. I decide temporary safety is way better than going back home, so I tell him okay. A transport worker arrives, a middle-aged woman in regular clothes who leads us out to her car in the parking lot. It's just a normal sedan, not a police vehicle, which makes everything feel less scary. She drives us through the city as the sun comes up, and I watch the buildings pass by and feel this weird mix of relief and terror. The shelter is a big 2-story house in a regular neighborhood with a fenced yard and flowers in the front. The director meets us at the door, a woman who introduces herself as Miss Monahan, with a warm smile that reaches her eyes. She walks us inside and shows us around, pointing out the kitchen and living room and bathroom. There are other kids here, maybe 6 or 7 total, and they glance at us but don't ask questions. Miss Monahan takes us upstairs to a room with 2 beds, clean sheets, and a window with actual curtains. She explains the house rules in a calm voice. No violence toward other residents or staff. Respect quiet hours from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Attend school once enrolled. Participate in daily chores like dishes or vacuuming. She says everything like it's normal, like we're normal kids who just need a place to stay. I look around the room and notice there's a lock on the inside of the door, and Miss Monahan says we can lock it at night if that makes us feel safer. Everything feels almost normal except for the part where we're living with strangers because our mother tried to traffic us to Thailand. Miss Monahan leaves us alone to unpack our backpack, which takes about 2 minutes since we barely have anything. Noah sits on his bed and touches the sheets like he's checking if they're real. I collapse onto my bed fully clothed and close my eyes. I sleep for 12 hours straight, so deep I don't even dream. When I wake up, it's dark outside and Noah is shaking my shoulder, his face pale and sweaty. He whispers that he had a nightmare about Mom finding us and dragging us back home. We're both breathing hard and scared, but then I remember the locked door, and the staff member Miss Monahan said sits at the front desk all night. I get up and check the door lock, then look out the window at the quiet street. Nobody knows we're here except Mr. Wolf and the police. Noah calms down after a few minutes and we go downstairs to get water from the kitchen. The next morning, Mr. Wolf returns with more questions, sitting with us in the shelter's small office. This time I ask if I can record the interview on his phone so I don't have to keep retelling everything over and over. Mr. Wolf thinks about it for a second, then agrees and hands me his phone with the voice recorder app open. He seems impressed that I thought of it and I feel a tiny bit of control coming back. I answer his questions about Mom's daily routine and Dad's work schedule, and whether there were cameras in our house. That afternoon, Detective Reese comes by wanting to know about Mom's computer and phone. She asks if there might be evidence saved anywhere, messages or photos or documents. I explain about the cloud backups Mom used for all her files and how she controlled all our devices so everything synced automatically. Detective Reese nods like she expected this answer and knows exactly how to work around it, mentioning subpoenas and warrants. Later, a man in a suit arrives and introduces himself as Mr. Herman, a public defender who represents children in dependency court. He sits down with us and explains in simple words that there will be court hearings to decide if we can go home or need to stay in foster care. He says his job is to make sure the judge hears what we want, not what the adults want. Mr. Herman asks if we want to go back home, and I say no immediately, my voice loud and clear. Noah shakes his head too, pulling his sleeves down over the cigarette burns on his arms. Mr. Herman writes this down and promises he'll tell the judge exactly what we said. Mr. Herman pulls out a folder and spreads some papers on the table between us, pointing to different sections with his pen. He says there are 2 different court systems that might get involved in our case, and it's important we understand the difference, so we don't get confused. Dependency court is where we are right now, and it's all about keeping kids safe, deciding if we can go home or need to stay somewhere else until things get better. Criminal court is separate, and that's where they decide if mom broke laws and should be punished for crimes, which might happen later but isn't the same process. I nod because this actually makes sense of why so many different people keep showing up to ask us questions. They're all working on different parts of the same problem. Mr. Herman says both courts might end up happening, but they don't affect each other directly. So even if criminal charges take forever, dependency court will still make decisions about our safety right away. Noah asks if Dad will go to court too, and Mr. Herman says probably, since Dad knew what was happening and didn't stop it, which makes that complicit in legal terms. The next morning, Mr. Wolf shows up early and says we have a doctor appointment at 9 a.m., a pediatrician who works with kids in situations like ours. We pile into his car and drive across town to a medical building that looks normal except for the sign that says Child Advocacy Center. The waiting room has toys and books instead of just magazines, and the receptionist smiles at us like we're regular kids, not case files. A woman in scrubs comes out and introduces herself as the pediatrician, shaking both our hands and explaining she's going to do a complete exam to document our injuries for the court. She leads us back to an exam room that's painted with murals of forests and has a big window letting in sunlight. The pediatrician starts with me, checking my scalp where Mom used to yank my hair, taking photos of the bald patches and the scars on my skin. She finds bruises on my arms in the exact shape of Mom's fingers from when she'd grab me, and she measures them with a ruler while explaining this, helps prove someone held me hard enough to leave marks. When she examines my back, I feel embarrassed about the scars from the wooden spoon, but she just documents each one carefully and tells me these marks tell an important story about what I survived. She takes x-rays of my ribs and finds an old fracture that healed on its own, probably from when Mom shoved me into the kitchen counter during a bad audition day. The whole exam takes almost an hour, and she writes everything down in precise medical language that will become evidence. Then it's Noah's turn, and I can see him starting to shake when the pediatrician asks him to take off his shirt. She notices right away and sits down in a chair so she's at his eye level instead of standing over him. She explains exactly what she's going to do before each step, showing him the camera and the measuring tools and asking if he's ready before touching him. Noah nods, but his breathing gets fast when she examines the cigarette burns on his arms, some still red and blistered, others turned into shiny scar tissue. The pediatrician lets him take a break after documenting the burns, offering him water and asking if he wants to sit by the window for a minute. Noah says he's okay to keep going, and she checks the rest of him, finding more bruises and examining his hands carefully. She discovers old fractures in 2 of his fingers that healed crooked because they were never set properly, probably from when Mom slammed his hand in a drawer for forgetting lines. The pediatrician explains that bones are really strong and these injuries will heal completely now that he's safe. His body knows how to fix itself when given the chance. Noah asks in a small voice if the cigarette burns will leave scars forever, and she's quiet for a second before answering honestly that some of them probably will. The deeper ones have damaged too many layers of skin. But she adds that scars are just marks showing he survived something hard, and lots of people have scars that fade over time and stop hurting. Noah seems okay with this answer, like he appreciates her not lying to make him feel better. That night back at the shelter, I wake up to Noah whispering my name in the dark. He's sitting up in his bed across the room, hugging his knees, and I can tell from his voice something's wrong. I get up and sit next to him, asking what's going on, and he's quiet for a long time before saying he's scared he'll grow up to be like Mom. He says he already feels mean sometimes, wanting to hurt people who annoy him or make him mess up, and what if that means he's turning into her? My throat gets tight because I've had the same thought, wondering if her crazy is genetic or something we caught from living with her too long. I tell Noah that the difference is, we know it's wrong and we're worried about it, while Mom thinks her behavior is totally fine and everyone else is the problem. I make him promise that we'll always protect each other and call each other out if we start acting mean or treating people bad, and he promises back. Then he reaches over and squeezes my hand 3 times, which has been our secret code since we were little. 3 squeezes means I love you when we can't say it out loud. I squeeze back 3 times, and we sit there in the dark for a while before he lies back down. Mr. Wolf comes back on day 4 with a folder full of school enrollment forms, sitting down with us in the shelter's kitchen. He says we need to get enrolled in the local elementary school to keep up with our education, and the longer we wait, the harder it'll be to catch up. My whole body goes cold at the idea of being in public where other kids might recognize us from auditions or commercials. What if someone tells their parents they saw us and word gets back to Mom about where we are? What if she shows up at the school pretending to be a normal mom picking up her kids? Mr. Wolf sees my face and asks what I'm worried about, so I explain about being recognized and Mom finding us. He thinks about this for a minute, then says, maybe we can wait a bit longer until things are more settled with the court case, and in the meantime, the shelter has a tutor who can work with us a few hours a day. I feel my shoulders relax because I'm not ready to be around that many people yet, not when I still jump every time a door opens. Mr. Herman shows up that afternoon for another meeting, this time bringing a practice worksheet about court procedures. He explains that in 1 week there's going to be a first hearing where a judge decides if the emergency removal was necessary or if we should go home. The medical evidence from the pediatrician is really strong, plus our statements and the detective's initial findings, so Mr. Herman thinks the judge will definitely agree we can't go home right now. He walks us through what will happen at the hearing, who will be there, what questions we might get asked. Noah wants to know if we have to see Mom, and Mr. Herman says she'll be in the courtroom, but we don't have to talk to her or sit near her. I practice answering potential questions like why we ran away and what we're afraid of, trying to keep my voice steady like I did for all those auditions. Except this time I'm not acting. I'm just telling the truth about my actual life, which feels weird after years of pretending to be other people. The next morning, Detective Reese calls Mr. Wolf's phone and he puts her on speaker so we can hear. She says she got a subpoena approved for Mom's email and text messages with all the producers and casting directors she's been working with. A subpoena means the court ordered the tech companies to turn over the records, even though Mom doesn't want them to, which will show the pattern of her behavior over months or years. Detective Reese explains it might take a few weeks for the companies to actually send the data because they have to verify the court order and pull the right files, but once she has them, she'll be able to see exactly what Mom was planning. I ask if the Thailand tickets will be in there, and the detective says definitely, plus probably communications about the private sessions Mom was trying to set up. Her voice sounds angry when she talks about it, like she takes this personally, and I feel safer knowing someone that determined is on our side. On day 5, Mr. Wolf gets a call from Mom's lawyer asking about supervised visitation. He hangs up and sits down with us to explain the request, asking what we think about seeing Mom with a professional supervisor present to make sure she follows rules. My stomach immediately feels sick at the idea of being in the same room with her, even with someone else there. But Noah says something that surprises me, that maybe if we see her, we'll stop having nightmares about her finding us, because we'll know she can't actually get to us. I think about this and realize he might be right, that part of the fear is not knowing where she is or what she's doing. If we see her in a controlled setting with rules and supervision, maybe it'll prove she doesn't have power over us anymore. I tell Mr. Wolf, okay, we'll try one visit, but if it goes bad, we're not doing it again. He says that's completely fair and he'll set it up for next week after the court hearing. Later that afternoon, a woman with kind eyes and gray hair shows up at the shelter, introducing herself as Miss Page, a therapist who works with kids who've been through trauma. She sits down with us in the living room and explains she's not here to make us talk about scary stuff right away. She just wants to teach us some tools for when we feel panicked or afraid. Missy Page shows us a grounding technique where we describe 5 things we can see, 4 things we can touch, 3 things we can hear, 2 things we can smell, and 1 thing we can taste. She has us practice it right there, and I list the bookshelf, the window, the couch, the carpet, the plant, then touch the couch fabric, the pillow, the table, my shirt. I hear the heater running, a car outside, someone talking in another room. I smell dinner cooking and the soap from the bathroom. I taste the mint gum Mr. Page gave us. By the time I finish the exercise, my breathing has slowed down and my hands aren't shaking anymore. Noah does it too and seems calmer afterward, like his brain reset or something. Miss Page explains this technique works because it brings our brain back to the present moment, instead of stuck in fear about the past or future, and we can use it anytime, anywhere. Miss Page doesn't push us to talk about Mom or the abuse, instead asking about things we like and what makes us feel calm. I mention I used to like reading before Mom took away all my books except scripts, saying novels were a waste of time that could be spent memorizing lines. Miss Page asks what kind of books I liked, and I tell her about this series with kids solving mysteries, how I'd read them under my covers with a flashlight after Mom thought I was asleep. She smiles and says she'll bring me some books next session, that reading for fun is actually really important for processing emotions and giving our brain a break from stress. Noah says he likes drawing but doesn't have any supplies, and Mr. Page promises to bring colored pencils and a sketchbook for him too. When she leaves an hour later, I feel lighter somehow. Like maybe there are people who actually care about what we want instead of what we can do for them. By the end of week 1, something changes inside me. I wake up on day 7 and realize my stomach doesn't hurt before I even open my eyes. For the first time in forever, I'm not immediately scared about what Mom will make me do that day or how I'll mess up and get punished. The shelter routine is predictable in a way that feels safe instead of boring. Breakfast happens at 7:30 every single morning. Always cereal or toast with juice, and nobody yells if I eat too slow or spill something. After breakfast, we do chores, which means making our beds and helping clear dishes. Then there's lunch and activities like board games or art projects. Dinner is at 6 o'clock, and then homework time for the kids who go to the school, followed by free time where we can read or watch TV, and lights out at 9 o'clock. The schedule never changes, and nobody ever hits us or makes us perform or tells us we're worthless. I start sleeping through the night without nightmares about Mom finding us. Noah notices too because he tells me one morning that he forgot to be scared when he woke up, like his brain finally believes we're actually safe here. On day 9, Mr. Herman calls the shelter and asks to speak with me. The staff member hands me the phone and I take it into the quiet room so Noah won't hear in case it's bad news. Mr. Herman's voice sounds tired when he tells me that Dad's lawyer contacted him saying Dad wants to cooperate with the investigation. He'll provide documents and testimony about Mom's behavior if it helps our case. But Mr. Herman sounds skeptical, like he doesn't actually believe Dad will follow through, and he warns me not to get my hopes up about Dad suddenly becoming helpful. I feel this weird, empty sadness wash over me. Not because I miss Dad, but because maybe he'll finally do something right and it doesn't even matter anymore. It's too late for Dad to protect us. The time for him to help was years ago when Mom first started hurting us. Not now, after we had to save ourselves. I thank Mr. Herman for telling me and hang up, then sit in the quiet room for 10 minutes processing how I feel basically nothing about Dad, except disappointment that he waited until it was pointless. Detective Reese spends day 10 tracking down our old acting coach from 2 years ago, the one mom fired after Noah's universal incident. The detective calls that evening to update us on what she learned. The coach confirmed mom's harsh methods during their interview, admitting she saw mom yell at us constantly and enforce strict diets and push us past exhaustion. But the coach claims she didn't know about the physical abuse, saying mom must have hidden that part from her. Detective Reese tells us this is typical, that abusers are really good at hiding the worst parts of what they do and showing a different face to outsiders. Even though the coach didn't witness the cigarette burns or the candle torture, her testimony still helps establish the pattern of mom's obsessive controlling behavior and unrealistic demands. The detective explains that building a case means collecting lots of small pieces of evidence that together paint the full picture, and the coach's statement is one more piece showing mom's treatment of us was wrong, even in the parts other people could see. The court hearing happens on day 8, and Mr. Herman calls beforehand to tell us we don't have to attend. I feel relieved because the idea of sitting in a courtroom while people talk about us sounds awful. Noah and I stay at the shelter playing cards in the living room while the hearing happens downtown, both of us too nervous to focus but trying to act normal. Mr. Herman calls at 2 o'clock in the afternoon with the results. The judge granted a temporary restraining order against Mom, which means she legally cannot come near us or try to contact us in any way. If she violates it, she'll be arrested. The judge also approved our continued placement in foster care while the investigation continues, agreeing that returning home would be unsafe. Mr. Herman sounds pleased with the outcome, saying the judge clearly took our situation seriously and made the right protective orders. After I hang up, I tell Noah the news, and we both sit there feeling this strange mix of relief and sadness. We're safe from Mom, but it's official now that our family is broken and we can't go home. Not that home was ever actually safe, but something about the court making it official feels final in a way that hurts, even though it's the right thing. Mr. Wolf shows up on day 11 with a folder full of paperwork about school enrollment. He sits with Noah and me at the dining table and explains they want us to start attending the local elementary school so we don't fall behind in our education. But there's a safety plan in place to protect us. We'll be registered under Mom's maiden name instead of Cartwright so she can't track us through school records. The office will have our photos and instructions not to release us to anyone except approved CPS personnel. A counselor will check in with us every single day to make sure we're okay and not being bullied or having problems. Mr. Wolf asks what I think about this plan, and I consider it for a minute. Staying at the shelter all day is getting boring since there's only so many board games you can play, and I actually used to like learning before Mom turned everything into audition prep. I tell Mr. Wolf, okay, we'll try going to the school, but if it feels unsafe or kids recognize us from auditions, we might need to stop. He agrees that's fair and says he'll get us enrolled to start on Monday. The first day of school is absolutely terrifying. Noah and I walk into the building on Monday morning with a staff member from the shelter, and my heart pounds so hard I feel dizzy. What if kids recognize us? What if someone tells Mom where we are? What if the teachers are mean like Mom's acting coaches? But the counselor meets us at the entrance and walks us directly to our classrooms, introducing us to the teachers privately before other students arrive. My teacher is a woman with a gentle voice who shows me where to sit and tells me I can step out to the counselor's office anytime I need a break. When class starts and I space out during the math lesson because my brain is still catching up on feeling safe, she doesn't call on me or embarrass me. She just lets me sit there processing until I can focus again. At lunch, Noah finds me in the cafeteria and we eat together. Not talking much, but glad to have each other nearby. The other kids are curious and some try to ask questions about where we're from, but I just say we moved here recently and change the subject. By the end of the day, I'm exhausted from the stress but also proud that we made it through. Day 2 of school goes worse for Noah. He's walking between classes when a group of kids crowds around him in the hallway asking questions about why he's new and where he lived before. Too many voices and faces all at once, and I can see from down the hall that he's shutting down. His face goes blank and his body freezes and he stops being able to talk, just standing there while kids keep asking him things. I push through the crowd and grab his hand, but he's already too far gone into panic mode. A teacher notices and calls the counselor, who shows up within a minute and activates Noah's support plan. She takes him to a quiet room away from all the noise and chaos, then calls me out of my class to sit with him. I find him curled up in a beanbag chair, breathing too fast and shaking. I sit next to him and start doing the grounding exercise Mr. Page taught us, listing 5 things I can see, 4 things I can touch, 3 things I can hear, 2 things I can smell, 1 thing I can taste. Noah follows along with me, his breathing gradually slowing down as his brain comes back to the present moment. After 20 minutes, he can breathe normally again and whispers that he's sorry for causing problems. I tell him he didn't cause anything. His brain just got overwhelmed, and that's exactly why the support plan exists. Detective Reese comes by the shelter on day 12 with news she calls good, but her face looks grim. She sits down with us in the living room and pulls out printed documents from her briefcase. She got the airline records from the booking Mom made, and it confirms everything we feared. Mom bought 4 tickets to Bangkok for all of us, including Dad, departing 2 days after we ran away. The tickets were one-way with no return date booked. Detective Reese's jaw is tight when she explains what this suggests about Mom's intentions. One-way tickets to Thailand with no plan to come back means Mom wasn't taking us for a vacation, or even a sketchy audition. She was planning to take us somewhere with loose child protection laws and keep us there permanently, probably to exploit us in ways that would have been illegal in the United States. The detective says this evidence significantly strengthens the criminal case against Mom because it shows premeditation and intent to harm. I feel sick hearing it confirmed that Mom was literally going to traffic us, but also grateful we trusted our instincts and ran when we did. 2 more days and we would have been on that plane with no way to escape. Mr. Herman comes by on day 13 to help me write something called a victim impact statement for court. He explains it's a letter where I describe how Mom's actions affected me, and the judge will read it when deciding what happens next. He gives me a notebook and a pen and sits with me while I try to figure out what to write. The words come slowly at first because there's so much to say, and it's hard to organize it all. I write about the fear I felt every single day, never knowing when Mom would hurt me or what would set her off. I write about the physical pain from the burns and the bruises and the hair pulling. I write about the feeling that I was only valuable if I was performing, that my worth as a person depended on booking roles and making Mom's dreams come true. I write about how I still flinch when someone raises their voice even though nobody at the shelter yells. I write about the nightmares and the panic attacks, and the constant state of alert waiting for the next punishment. By the time I finish 3 pages, my hand is cramping and my face is wet with tears. I didn't realize I was crying. Mr. Herman reads it over and tells me it's powerful and honest and exactly what the judge needs to understand our situation. Missy Page's therapy sessions start changing focus in week 2. Instead of just teaching us coping skills, she begins asking questions about my identity separate from being a performer. She wants to know what I like about myself that has nothing to do with acting or auditions or making other people happy. I sit there stumped because I've been trained since birth to see myself as a product, as something to be marketed and sold and improved for other people's consumption. I genuinely don't know how to answer what I like about myself just as a person. Missy Page is patient and asks smaller questions to help me figure it out. Am I kind? Am I smart? Am I funny? Do I have any interests that are just mine? I think about it hard and eventually tell her I'm good at protecting Noah, that I always put his safety first and make sure he's okay even when I'm scared too. And I'm brave, I guess, because we ran away and called for help and keep telling the truth even when it's hard. Missy Page smiles and writes this down, telling me those are real strengths that have nothing to do with performing. She says over time we'll build a longer list of things that make me who I am, beyond what Mom tried to turn me into, and slowly I'll learn to see myself as a whole person, instead of just a failed child star. On day 10, Mr. Wolf shows up at the shelter with paperwork from Mom's lawyer asking about visitation again. This time they want to do it at a professional supervision center with a whole list of rules attached to the request. Mr. Wolf sits down with Noah and me in the quiet room and goes through every single rule they're proposing. Mom can't bring any gifts or toys or food. She can't ask where we're living now or what school we go to. She can't try to give us anything at all, including notes or letters or phone numbers. The supervisor can end the visit immediately if Mom breaks any rule or makes us uncomfortable. Mr. Wolf watches our faces while he explains this, and asks what we think about trying one visit to see how it goes. Noah looks at me with scared eyes, but I remember what Missy Page said about facing things that scare us helps make them less scary over time. We agree to one visit, and Mr. Wolf promises he'll be in the building the whole time in case we need him. Missy Page comes to the shelter that afternoon specifically to help us practice for the visit. She sets up chairs like we're in the supervision room and pretends to be Mom trying different manipulation tactics. She fake cries and says she misses us so much and asks leading questions about our new placement. Noah and I practice saying the phrases Missy Page taught us. I say out loud several times until it feels normal in my mouth. Noah practices too, even though his voice shakes at first. Missy Page throws curveballs at us like pretending to slide us candy under the table or asking sneaky questions about our daily schedule. Each time we practice the right response, we get a little bit better at it. By the end of the session, I feel more prepared but still nervous about seeing Mom for real after 3 weeks of safety. The visit happens on a Tuesday afternoon in week 3 at a child advocacy center that looks more like a regular office building than anything official. The supervision room has a table and chairs and toys in the corner for younger kids, and a big mirror on one wall that's probably one of those see-through ones. The supervisor is a woman with gray hair who introduces herself and explains she'll be sitting right there the whole time taking notes. Noah sits close enough that our shoulders touch and I can feel him shaking a little bit. When Mom walks in, she looks completely different from how I remember. She's wearing jeans and a plain sweater instead of her usual dramatic outfits with the big jewelry and perfect makeup. Her hair is pulled back simple and she's already crying before she even sits down in the chair across from us. The supervisor stays quiet but alert, watching everything. Mom starts talking immediately about how sorry she is and how she only ever wanted the best for us. She says she got carried away with the Hollywood dream and pushed too hard, but she never meant to hurt us or make us feel unsafe. The words sound like she practiced them 100 times in front of a mirror. She keeps glancing at the supervisor between sentences like she's checking if her performance is landing right. I feel that old automatic instinct rising up to comfort her and tell her it's okay, and we forgive her. But then I remember all the therapy sessions with Miss Page about recognizing manipulation patterns. I notice how Mom's tears seem controlled and how she's using the exact kind of language that sounds good to adults. She talks about sacrifice and love and mistakes, but never actually names the specific things she did to us. Noah stays silent next to me, and I can tell he's seeing the same fake quality in her apology that I am. Halfway through the visit, Mom's hand moves under the table toward me while she's talking about wanting to rebuild trust. I feel something brush my leg and look down to see her trying to slide a folded piece of paper onto my lap without the supervisor seeing. My heart starts beating fast, but I remember exactly what Miss Page taught us to do in this situation. I pick up the paper with my fingers and hold it up in the air where the supervisor can see it clearly. My voice comes out steady when I say the words we practiced. The supervisor reaches over and takes the paper from my hand and unfolds it right there on the table. It's a phone number written in Mom's handwriting with the words, "Call me," underneath. The supervisor's voice gets firm, and she tells Mom directly that trying to pass notes is a violation of the visit rules, and this is her official warning. Mom's whole face changes in less than a second. The sad crying expression disappears and her eyes go hard and angry. She starts talking fast and loud about how we're ungrateful after everything she sacrificed for us. She gave up her own dreams to make us stars and spent every dollar on our careers, and now we're throwing it all away by believing lies from strangers. Her voice gets louder with each sentence and she's half standing out of her chair. The supervisor stands up too and tells Mom she needs to calm down, or the visit will end. Mom ignores her and keeps yelling about how we're ruining her life and destroying the family and being manipulated by the system. Noah starts crying next to me and I grab his hand tight. The supervisor walks to the door and opens it, and 2 security guards come in immediately like they were waiting right outside. The supervisor tells Mom in a calm voice that the visit is over, and she needs to leave the building now. Mom screams the whole way to the door about how this is unfair and will regret this, and she's getting a better lawyer. The security guards escort her out with one on each side, and we can hear her voice echoing down the hallway getting farther away. Noah and I sit there frozen in our chairs with our hands locked together and both of us shaking. The supervisor comes back and closes the door and brings us bottles of water from a small fridge. She sits back down and tells us in a kind voice that we did exactly the right thing by reporting the note immediately. She says Mom's reaction proved why these supervision rules exist, and why we need protection from her right now. Mr. Herman calls that evening after Mr. Wolf tells him what happened at the visit. He says he's filing a report with the court about the violated rules and Mom's behavior. He's going to ask the judge to require a full psychological evaluation before allowing any more contact between Mom and us. I feel guilty for getting Mom in trouble because part of me still has that trained response to protect her and keep her happy. But another part of me feels relieved that someone with authority finally saw how she really acts when things don't go her way. Mr. Herman says the report will include the supervisor's detailed notes, and the attempted note passing, and the security guard statements. All of it goes into our case file as evidence about why we need to stay in protective custody. Detective Reese calls Mr. Wolf 3 days later with news about the subpoena for Mom's email account. The tech company finally turned over the records, and Detective Reese spent hours going through messages between Mom and various producers and directors. She found multiple email threads where Mom was negotiating what she called private sessions and special opportunities for us. The language was coded with phrases like private audition, and exclusive consideration, and special arrangement, but Detective Reese says it's clear enough to build a case. The messages show Mom discussing money amounts and scheduling and requirements that make it obvious she was trying to sell access to us for roles. Detective Reese explains this evidence supports criminal charges for attempted child exploitation and possibly trafficking depending on what more they find. Mr. Herman comes to the shelter on Saturday to prepare us for the next court hearing in 2 weeks. He says there's a chance we might have to testify in front of the judge about our experiences. He brings a notebook with practice questions written down, and we spend an hour going through possible things the judge might ask. Mr. Herman teaches us to answer with specific facts instead of feelings. He tells us to speak clearly and look at the judge when we talk. He explains that telling the truth about what Mom did isn't being mean to her or betraying her. It's protecting ourselves and making sure we stay safe. Noah asks if Mom will be in the courtroom, and Mr. Herman says yes, but she'll have to sit far away from us and can't approach us or talk to us. We practice answering questions until the words feel less scary and more like just facts we're reporting about things that happened. Miss Page notices the change during our next session 3 weeks after the supervised visit disaster. She asks me to try the grounding technique when I start feeling anxious about an upcoming quiz, and I get through it in about 8 minutes without totally freaking out. She writes something in her notes and tells me that's real progress, that my brain is learning it can handle stress without shutting down completely. The panic attacks still happen, but they're shorter now, and I can usually talk myself through them using the 5 senses method she taught me. I count things I can see, name things I can touch, listen for specific sounds, and it pulls me back from that drowning feeling. Miss Page says 3 weeks without seeing Mom, except that one awful visit has given my nervous system time to start healing. My body is finally figuring out that I'm actually safe now, and doesn't need to stay in constant terror mode. She asks how school is going, and I admit the crowded hallways and loud cafeteria still make me want to hide. The school counselor calls me in the next day to talk about accommodations. She's reviewed my file and talked to Miss Page about what might help me feel less overwhelmed. She suggests replacing PE with a quiet study period because the gym is chaotic with too many kids yelling and balls flying and whistles blowing. I almost cry with relief because PE has been the worst part of every day, my heart racing the whole time and my hands shaking so bad I drop everything. The counselor types up the schedule change right there and prints me a new copy. She explains I'll spend that period in the library where it's calm and I can work on homework or read. Having this accommodation makes school suddenly feel possible instead of something I have to survive. I can handle my classes when I know there's a quiet space waiting for me in the middle of the day. Noah's doing better too in his own way. He picks art as his one elective, and the teacher lets him paint whatever he wants instead of following assignments. He creates these pictures of houses with huge windows and families sitting around dinner tables together. The art teacher shows one to Ms. Monahan during a check-in meeting and says, Noah's work reveals a kid processing trauma in healthy ways. His paintings always show the same thing. People being together in bright, safe spaces where you can see everything through the windows. No secrets, no hidden rooms, just normal families doing normal things. The art teacher keeps his paintings in a special folder and tells him he has real talent. Week 4 arrives faster than I expect, and Mr. Herman calls to say the big dependency court hearing is scheduled. This time we have to go because the judge wants to see us and hear directly from us about what happened. My stomach drops when he says it, but I know we can't avoid this forever. The courthouse is this massive building with columns out front and security guards checking bags. Mr. Herman meets us at the entrance and walks us through the metal detectors, staying right next to us the whole time. Inside, the ceilings are so high they make me dizzy and everything echoes. People in suits rush past carrying folders and talking on phones. Mr. Herman guides us to a wooden bench outside the courtroom and explains what will happen. The judge will ask me questions and I need to answer clearly and honestly. He reminds me to use specific examples like Miss Page taught me. Not just general statements about mom being mean. Facts are what matter here. When they call our case, we walk into the courtroom and it's even more intense than I imagined. The judge sits up high behind a huge desk, and mom is at a table with her lawyer on one side of the room. We sit at a different table with Mr. Herman between us and her. I can feel mom staring at us, but I keep my eyes on the judge like Mr. Herman said to do. The judge is an older man with gray hair, and he looks at me over his glasses when he starts asking questions. I testify for 15 minutes and my voice shakes at first, but gets steadier as I go. The judge asks about our home life, and I tell him about the 4 a.m. wake-ups for auditions, and mom yanking my hair until my scalp bled. I describe the pills she gave us and how they made my heart race. I explain about the Denny's predator and how mom got mad at me for calling 911 instead of being worried about what could have happened. I mention the Thailand tickets we found and how we were supposed to leave in 12 hours for some opportunity that sounded really dangerous. The judge writes notes and nods, asking follow-up questions that show he's actually listening. He asks Noah about the cigarette burns, and Noah lifts his sleeves to show the scars. Mom's lawyer stands up and tries to make it sound like we're making things up or remembering wrong. She suggests maybe the burns were accidents or maybe we're confused about the pills. She asks if mom ever actually hurt us on purpose or if we just didn't like her rules. I feel my anger building but keep my voice calm when I answer. The cigarette burns weren't accidents because I watched mom hold them against Noah's skin while he screamed. The pills weren't vitamins because they made us feel weird, and we found the bottles hidden in mom's closet. Then mom can't help herself anymore. She interrupts from her table and starts yelling about how she gave up everything to make us stars. Her voice gets louder and shriller as she goes on about sacrificing her own dreams and spending all her money on our training and headshots. She says we're ungrateful brats who don't understand how the industry works. The judge tells her to be quiet, but she keeps going, saying she did what any good stage mother would do. The judge tells her again to stop talking, and her lawyer tries to grab her arm, but mom jerks away. She's fully screaming now about how we ruined her life and threw away our big break. The judge's face goes hard, and he tells the bailiff to remove her if she can't control herself. Mom finally stops, but the damage is done. Everyone in the courtroom just watched her prove exactly what we've been saying about her. Her lawyer looks defeated and doesn't ask any more questions. The judge reviews all the evidence they've collected over the past 4 weeks. He mentions the medical records showing Noah's burns and my injuries. He talks about the airline tickets to Thailand with no return date. He references Detective Reese's preliminary findings about mom's emails with producers. He brings up the supervised visit where mom tried to pass me a note and then screamed at us. He looks directly at mom when he says the court finds clear evidence of abuse and neglect. His order is that we stay in foster care, and mom has to complete a psychological evaluation and parenting classes before any future contact is even considered. All visits must remain supervised, and mom cannot contact us in any way outside of approved visits. She starts crying, and her lawyer puts a hand on her shoulder, but the judge is already moving to the next case. We're dismissed, and Mr. Herman leads us out a side door so we don't have to walk past mom. Outside the courtroom, Mr. Wolf is waiting, and he has news. He found a foster family willing to take both of us together for longer-term placement. They're a couple with experience in trauma care who specifically asked for siblings. We meet them that same week at Mr. Wolf's office, and they introduce themselves without trying to hug us or act like we're already family. Their house is in a quiet neighborhood with a fenced yard, and they have an old dog named Buster who just lies on the porch in the sun. They show us pictures of the bedrooms we'd have. Separate rooms, but right next to each other. They explain their rules, which are normal things like homework before TV and helping with dishes. They don't mention performing or auditions or our potential. They don't ask us to be anything except safe. Noah asks if we have to call them mom and dad, and they say we can call them by their first names until we're comfortable with something else. They ask what foods we like and what makes us feel calm. They promise we can see Miss Page for therapy and keep going to our current school. Mr. Wolf gives Noah and me time alone to talk about it. We sit in the waiting room holding hands, and Noah whispers that the house looked quiet and the dog seemed nice. I tell him it's worth trying because anything is better than going back to mom or being separated. We agree together, and when we tell Mr. Wolf, he smiles and starts the paperwork. That weekend, we move our few belongings from the shelter to the foster home. The couple helps us unpack and then leaves us alone to settle in. Noah and I sit on my bed looking at the room with its clean walls and soft blanket and window that shows trees outside. We hold hands and don't say anything because we're both thinking the same thing. Maybe this could finally be a real home where nobody hurts us for not being perfect. So that's the complete timeline from recognizing danger to reaching safety. Before you go, if you found this informative about the child welfare system and how these cases work, subscribing keeps you updated on new content. I've got more stories about advocacy and protection coming your way. See you in the next one.